guys, welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to talk to you guys about porosity. So porosity is a characteristic of hair, not just natural hair but all hair, and it's basically defined as the ability of the hair to absorb and retain moisture. So that moisture might be anything like water or different creams that you put in your hair, different leave-ins, products, gels and stylers, and even different oils. So there's oh no, just kidding, ha! So generally we break porosity up into three main categories: high porosity, low porosity, and normal porosity. I'll get into a little bit of what the differences are between all of those levels, but you guys should also know that there are a few tests that you can do to kind of get a general idea of your porosity. None of these are actually proven. For a lot of these tests, the results can be altered depending on a lot of extraneous factors, so I'll get into that in a second. But basically in this video I'm going to tell you guys about each of those levels of porosity and what products work well with people with those porosities and what you can do to sort of keep your hair healthy if you have each of those porosities. So I'm going to quickly go through the three different tests that I know of to test your porosity. The very first one is called the cup test, which is where you take a glass of water and you basically take a strand of shed hair and you just take one strand, place it on the top, and you see where the hair lies after about a minute or two. There's also a test called the strand test, which is when you take a strand of hair, let me grab one, and you basically run your fingers up it like this. You put your two fingers together and you run up the strand like this. If you feel like it's bumpy, you might have higher porosity hair, and if it feels like it's flat and very smooth, you might have low porosity hair. And then the third test that I have for you guys is the spray bottle test, and that's basically where you take your hair natural and you spray water on it with a spray bottle. If the water tends to bead up on the outside of your hair strands and doesn't really seem to soak in, you probably have low porosity hair. Whereas if your hair seems to soak up all the water immediately, then you probably have high porosity hair. Now I have to make a disclaimer that these tests are not 100% accurate. They depend a lot on, you know, things like the temperature of the water that you're using. Hot water is obviously going to get into your hair easier than cold water, more easily. If your hair is dirty, if your hair has a lot of product on it, obviously that's going to affect the rate at which products or water is absorbed into your hair. So a lot of these things can be affecting the tests. To get as accurate a result as possible, use room temperature water and make sure your hair is completely clean. So first I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about the different levels of porosity. So let's start off with high porosity hair. High porosity hair is when the cuticles of each individual hair strand are open up to the elements. This may be caused because of heat damage or because of chemical damage, environmental damage, over manipulation, or some people just have high porosity hair naturally. Because the cuticles are open, products can easily penetrate each individual hair strand, meaning that products that you apply to your hair are very easily soaked up. However, this also means that because the cuticles don't really shut tightly, the products also leave your hair very easily. So they get in easily and they leave easily, either through evaporation or through manipulation, and it gets pushed out of the hair strands. It's never really locked into the hair strand, so even though things easily get in, things also easily get out. Imagine it as like a window. If your window is open all the way and it starts raining, the rain is going to come into your house. However, if you leave the window open, it's eventually going to evaporate out as well. If you find that your hair dries out very easily, or if it dries quickly when it becomes wet, or gets really frizzy and big during humid weather, you might have high porosity hair. If you do any of the tests that I told you guys about, these are the signs of high porosity hair. If you do the cup test and your strand sinks all the way to the bottom, you probably have high porosity hair because your hair has soaked up all of the water that's surrounding it, making it heavy and making it fall to the bottom. If you do the strand test and you run your fingers up and you feel that it's bumpy, what you might be feeling are the raised cuticles as you slide your finger up the strand, so you might have high porosity hair. And then if you did the spray test, if you found that your hair soaked up all the water quickly, you might have high porosity hair because those cuticles are open and ready to receive that water. Moving on to low porosity hair. Low porosity hair is when the cuticles are laid very, very flat, very shut. This hair tends to be very shiny and tends to hold moisture very easily. So you might be thinking, well, that's great, that sounds perfect, that's the type of hair that everybody wants to have. Not necessarily, and I'm sure that people with low porosity hair can attest to that. The problem with low porosity hair is that it's very, very, very hard to moisturize. Imagine if your window is shut, there is no way for the rain to get into your house. You will have to like break the window. The cuticles in low porosity hair are laid so flat and shut so tightly that it's so hard to open them back up again in order to receive the product. Once you put the product in and once it's absorbed into the hair strand, the hair will naturally shut in the product and it'll keep it moisturized for a very long time, but the problem is getting it moisturized in the first place. If you find that, you know, when you step under the shower, your hair takes a long time to become soaked in the water, if you find that the water just kind of beads up on your strands or kind of runs off without really penetrating your hair, then you might have low porosity hair. With the strand test, if your strand tends to stay at the top floating, you probably have low porosity hair because the water surrounding it can't easily get into the hair strand, and so it doesn't ever sink into the water. If you do the strand test and you run your fingers up, it might feel smooth because the cuticles aren't open. Everything is laying completely flat. If they're laying flat, they'll feel smooth, so you probably have low porosity hair. And finally, if you do the water spraying test, if you find that the water just kind of beads up on your hair and doesn't really seem to soak into your hair, you might have low porosity hair. If you find that maybe you're getting mixed results on these tests, or maybe you feel like some of the high porosity things apply to you and some of the low porosity things apply to you, you might just have normal porosity hair. And that's just when the cuticles are open just the right amount to where if you open them more, you're able to put products in and you're also able to shut them tighter so that those products and that water can more easily be retained into your hair. Also, different parts of your hair can have different types of porosity, especially if a certain part of your hair is damaged and another part isn't, then the porosity might be different in different places of your hair as well. Okay, so now let's talk about caring for different types of hair. When you have high porosity hair, your main focus is sealing your hair. Sealing means once you've applied your products and you applied your moisturizers to your hair, the act of sealing puts a protective layer around your strands, making sure that all of the products and moisturization that you just applied to your hair does not leave. It doesn't leave through evaporation, it doesn't leave through manipulation or rubbing against everything, and sealing is usually done with an oil. Now, with high porosity hair, you tend to want to use heavier products. You want to use like heavier butters, more emollient products, things with lots of oils, lots of butters, lots of ingredients to really penetrate the hair and also to really seal in all that moisture. Because high porosity hair tends to lose moisture very easily, it's also important that you moisturize your hair often and make sure that every time you moisturize your hair, you seal it back in. A lot of people with high porosity hair tend to use the LOC method, or LOC, which stands for liquid, oil, and cream, meaning that you put your liquid on, you seal that liquid in with oil, and then you put another layer of cream over it to really make sure that all of the moisture that you've just put in is sealed. So the oil tends to be a sealing barrier for the moisturizer that you put underneath it, and then the heavy cream tends to be an extra layer of moisture on top of that oil and on top of the moisturizer that you just sealed in. Ooh, I'm hot. High porosity hair also benefits from protein treatments, which is when you apply proteins that are naturally found in your hair to your hair in order to rebuild the structure. So another thing with high porosity hair is that not only are the cuticles open, but sometimes they might also be broken, fragile, breaking off. So adding protein really helps to rebuild the strands. It's not easy to overdose on protein when you have high porosity hair, but it is possible, so just be careful. Usually people will alternate between protein treatments and deep conditioning treatments with high porosity hair. So for low porosity hair, your main focus is on attaining moisture. It's not retaining moisture. Your hair is definitely going to be retaining moisture, but the problem is getting the moisture in the first place. With high porosity hair, it's important that you avoid anything that's too harsh on your hair, such as like really strong shampoos or sulfates, because your hair is already so fragile because your cuticles are open. So you're exposing this inner core of your hair and you don't want to damage that. So it's very important that you stay away from sulfates and stay away from any harsh ingredients that may damage your hair any further. It's also advised that you rinse your hair in cold water because cold water can shock the cuticles closed. As you guys may know, warm causes things to expand and cold causes things to, contract or to get smaller. So if you rinse your hair with cold water, that can help to close the cuticle shut and thus sealing in all of that moisture. With deep conditioning, it's not essential that you use heat because the point of heat with deep conditioning is to open up your cuticles to allow the products to penetrate, but in this case, you don't have to sit under a hooded dryer. Usually just a shower cap or putting a towel over it should produce enough heat to make the deep conditioner work. It's important that you apply your products in layers so that you're putting in moisturizer and then sealing in the moisturizer and then putting on your cream, just like I said during the lock method. It's also important that you apply these products with soaking wet hair because your hair is gonna easily soak in that water, so you want to make sure that you have enough water on your hair to where it won't dry out before you put the products on. And you also want to use really heavy butters that you know will last and linger on your hair for a very long time. Low porosity hair also tends to be dry because of lack of penetration, so it's very important that you use ingredients that are very liquid based, very runny, very watery, because those are more easily absorbed into the hair than heavy, dense butters. The problem with low porosity hair is that it resists penetration. So whenever you're washing your hair or applying products to your hair, you want to make sure that your hair is hot, okay, so that the cuticles can open up. So when you wash your hair, try washing your hair in pretty warm to hot water so that your cuticles can open up. When you're applying your deep conditioner, try using a blow dryer on your head or a hooded dryer or a hot cap to really open up the cuticles and to make sure that the products that you're applying are really penetrating your hair shafts. Low porosity hair is generally protein sensitive because it's not really lacking anything protein wise and structurally, so low porosity hair doesn't really need a lot of protein treatment. So be careful, because if you overdose on protein, your hair can start to become fragile and break off a lot actually. Low porosity hair is also prone to buildup because the products don't ever really penetrate completely, so a lot of product tends to sit on top. So it's very important that people with low porosity hair shampoo their hair often or do a really good cleanse to make sure they get rid of all the buildup on their scalp and on their strands, because that can even make it harder for products to penetrate, because then it'll just end up piling up in layers on your hair. And as far as oils for light porosity hair, is that what's called, light? No, it's called low. And as far as oils for low porosity hair, you want to use very light oils such as jojoba oil or grapeseed oil, which are more on the runny side, not like castor oil, which is super heavy, and those will be able to seal in your hair without weighing it down a lot. Alright guys, that's pretty much all I have. If you have any more questions, you can leave them in the comments below. I'll be scanning through and answering. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope it was super informative for you guys. If you guys were wondering, I have high porosity hair. I basically just pile on the moisturizers and the oil all the time, and that is enough to work for me. You know, as long as I'm keeping my hair moisturized, my hair is fine. I avoid sulfates, I avoid heat, I avoid all of those things, extra manipulation that might make my hair become like frizzy and dry. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what you guys want to see next, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!